I'm back. I know. Where the hell have I been? Well, I've been working, believe it or not. I actually had a sit-down interview a couple of days ago with Marianne Williamson, and I will be getting that interview up once I get it edited and put together. So that is coming. And, you know, it was just a lot of preparation to get ready for that. I am a one-man band, so it's a bit tough, you know, kind of getting everything together and everything prepped and whatnot. And I did have somebody help me from the Convo Couch. I did have Jonathan, who was helping me out with that interview, and I want to thank him. He was excellent. And you want to check out the Convo Couch, you can go to their link. I put it down below. They're also a great progressive show, and I appreciate Jonathan's help during that interview with Marianne Williamson. So that is coming up. Other than that, I don't really have any excuses, but I'm here. So let's move on and talk about some of the big headlines that have been going on throughout the day. And then we'll talk about the big story that everyone's talking about. Of course, it's William Barr and the Mueller report. And I have just been screaming at my television all day. I mean, it's just lunacy. What is going on? But anyway, let's start off with some of the big headlines. 4 big things that we want to talk about today. Julian Assange, he has been sentenced to 50 weeks in prison for jumping bail. And now he's fighting his extradition to the United States. They're trying to get him to come here. He's facing charges in the U.S. They're conspiring to hack a Pentagon computer by helping former intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning crack a password is what they're claiming he did. Not exactly sure what the actual charge is. That sounds like kind of a mouthful there. Conspiring to hack a Pentagon computer by helping former Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning crack a password. That's probably not the actual charge, but he is fighting his extradition. And as he should, because this is outrageous. He should absolutely not be charged for what he's done. His quote here says, "I do not wish to surrender myself for extradition for doing journalism that has won many awards and protected many people." I mean, the reality of it is that they're trying to get him. They're trying to get him for helping her hack a computer, which he probably did not do. And she turned over documents to him. He published them. Just like the Pentagon papers were published, just like, anything else that is found and leaked. So this is definitely an attack on whistleblowers. This is an attack on publishers. This is an attack on journalists. This is a full-blown attack, and everybody should be screaming about this, but we're not really hearing anything about it. You know, I turn on CNN and they give one line about it saying he's been sentenced to 50 weeks, and then they move on with the next thing. And this is just, which is outrageous coming from a news or a quote unquote news organization for them to just not make this a bigger deal. It should be this should be a bigger deal. This is an attack on everything that any of these journalists and free press stand for. And, he's being charged with exposing the U.S. government. And I know a lot of Democrats hate him. They think, oh, well, it's because he was so biased against Hillary Clinton and he was exposing Hillary Clinton. Why didn't he expose Donald Trump? Well, there's a really simple explanation for that. It's because Hillary Clinton has had a very long political career. So it was a lot easier to dig up a lot of crap. And the things that she did happened to do with life and death because she was in politics. She was Secretary of State. So for her, it was a lot of life and death situations. Donald Trump was a businessman. He did leak information about Donald Trump, but it wasn't nearly as salacious because guess what? He wasn't controlling drones and bombs and teams of military and dealing with quote unquote diplomacy, meanwhile trying to oust leaders and advocating for it and laughing for it. That's why. It's pretty simple why. So, when Democrats are screaming saying, oh, well, Julian Assange seemed really one-sided, well, that's because, remember, Donald Trump was like the civilian who came into politics out of nowhere. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, has had a lifelong career to murder people. Not saying that that's what she did specifically. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say it like that. I apologize. I didn't mean it like that. But definitely, I'll let you be the judge on that, on what you think happened in the government at that time. But definitely people are needing to be held responsible. He exposed her. That was that. So moving on here. So that's what we've got to say about Julian Assange. I'm really surprised that more people aren't screaming about this. I'm surprised and I'm not surprised. And the reason why they're not screaming about it is because many of them want to stay in the good graces. Many of these news outlets, they want to stay in the good graces of of the political people in power. They don't like him because he's, maybe they're liberal leaning, and they don't like him for what he did to Hillary Clinton in the election, and they blame him. And, or they want to keep their friends happy in politics so they can keep getting their own information. They want to keep their sources happy. I mean, I don't know exactly why they're not screaming more about this, but it is pretty outrageous. Okay, Facebook has banned some accounts. They came out announcing that they were banning various accounts: InfoWars, Milo Yiannopoulos, Alex Jones, Paul Joseph Watson, who was apparently from Breitbart News. He was an ex-Breitbart News editor. Louis Farrakhan and also Laura Loomer was banned from Facebook. They said that they violated their policies, that they are hate group, they're conspiracy theorists, and they spew hate speech. My big question, after I read about the ban, I was like, okay, so how do we then find out what their side of the story is? I mean, how do we find out what Milo Yiannopoulos has to say for himself, or Laura Loomer, or, if you've banned them from all these platforms and they can't then speak publicly, where do we go to get information on their side of the story? Where was their due process? Why won't Facebook release the reasons, the clear-cut reasons? They say, well, it's because they're dangerous individuals, is what they said. Well, show us how they're dangerous. We would like to see that. I want to see specifically what you mean by what is dangerous, so that the rest of us can know. And so that the rest of us can judge whether or not they're really truly dangerous individuals, or if you just don't like their ideas. I mean, I don't like a lot of the ideas of these people, but I don't think you're a dangerous person unless you actually are saying, rise up against this group, fight them with violence. Unless you're actually calling for violence, unless you're calling for, I just don't know how an idea, that's just, I would like to see what they mean by dangerous individuals, and what was their process of discovery to find out, okay, where are the facts? Let's look at the quotes, let's look at the posts, let's look at the content, the language, what was said. And I think they should release this to the public. But are they going to? Probably not. Probably none of us are ever going to see this. And that is a problem. This is a problem. Once again, it's another attack on free speech. This is another attack on individuals who might be exposing things. Now, these groups of people, I actually never follow any of them, and I don't really listen or read any of their stuff. So I don't know specifically about them. But that's the other thing that's strange about it, right? Is they were on these platforms. I'm on these platforms for the most part. I never saw any of their stuff. So how dangerous are they really? Don't you have to seek them out? Don't you have to follow them? Don't you have to want to see their content in order to see it? Don't you have to want to consume it? So they're basically robbing us of our choices. They're saying to you and me that they don't trust you and me to make our own wise decisions, that they should censor these people because they're afraid that you and I are going to listen to these people and agree with them. That's what they're really saying. They're not actually attacking these people. They're attacking us. They're saying you're not smart enough to make your own choice. That's what they're saying. So, I never came across these people because I didn't follow them. I didn't engage. I didn't care to know. So that's also why it's a little bit strange why they would ban these accounts when, you have to kind of be an active participant in this. But, I would like to hear from them. I'm going to try to reach out to some of these people because I would actually like to know what their side of the story is, what if Facebook actually notified them and gave them specifics, because I think that's important to know. Did Facebook tell them specifically, this is the thing you did specifically that we deemed was dangerous and hateful, and therefore we're going to ban you for this reason? Or did they just say, you know what, you're dangerous, you're hateful, we're getting rid of you? And then they didn't really say anything else. I would like to know about that, because I know here on YouTube, when I post videos and they get demonetized, they don't tell me really why. They don't give me any specifics. They just say this video is not suitable for advertisers, but they don't tell me anything beyond that. So This is the problem with the society and, that we're in right now, the society that we're ushering in with all of this digital media and social media, is that it is the wild, wild west, and there really isn't any regulation, and there really isn't a firm understanding of what is okay and what isn't okay. And we need to be having these conversations as a society. What do we really, should we really be banning any speech at all? I would say no, unless it's threatening, unless it's directly threatening people directly. I don't think we should be censoring ideas. I do believe in, if you want to combat bad ideas, have better ideas. Put out good ideas. Persuade people with the good ideas. Otherwise, these ideas go underground. They go to places like 8chan. People then fester there. Nobody then can spot it. And then dangerous things do happen. It's better if it's out in the open. Because it's better if a person has a bad idea and large swaths of people then go and say, hey, that's a bad idea. But if that person, if the idea itself is banned from the platform, then we don't even know where these people are consuming it. They go underground and they start consuming these ideas. And there isn't a big mob of us with sanity to say, hey, listen, that's a bad idea. Instead, they just go underground. So I don't think it's a good idea on many levels. Moving on here. So Hillary Clinton was on Rachel Maddow last night. And if you happen to catch it, Rachel was very excited to have Hillary Clinton on her show. She even put on extra makeup. And during the conversation, they were talking about what William Barr said in his testimony about whether or not it would be whether or not it's okay, or whether or not a campaign should have to report if a foreign entity is going to give them information, about an opponent, something along those lines. And William Barr he kind of hesitated, and he didn't really answer that question. And they were talking about that, about how, Donald Trump went and said, Russia, if you're listening, we need more emails, leak more of Hillary Clinton's emails, that whole fiasco that he said publicly. They were talking about that and saying how wrong that was, and that shouldn't even be allowed. And they were kind of joking about it. And one thing that Hillary Clinton said was, China, if you're listening, release Trump's tax returns, and talking about, well, what if China then had gone in and hacked and gotten Trump's tax returns and released them. And they were talking about how dangerous this all is, to allow a foreign agent or a foreign country to meddle in our elections in this way, to give opposition research or to hack and release information. And while I was watching this and this entire exchange, I thought, this is really strange, because wasn't it Hillary Clinton who paid for the Steele dossier? And wasn't the Steele dossier written and put together by a foreign spy? Right? Like, I get it, he's British, and I get it that we think that Great Britain is our friend, but how is that any different? How is that any different? So then you have to put a list together. You'd have to actually make a list of countries that are our enemies, countries that are adversaries, countries that are our friends and allies. You'd have to actually make a full-blown list. I guess you could go by NATO. So then would it have been okay if Turkey went and hacked in and delivered the Hillary Clinton's emails? Would that have made it okay? Because it was an ally, technically, a NATO ally. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. So she's sitting there and she's talking about this, and yet she's the one who paid for the Steele dossier. It was put together by a British spy. So, okay. Careful what you wish for, everybody. If you're going to start going down this road, you got to start looking in the mirror, because you're going to be next. You're going to be next. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe they all should just go into the slammer. I'm starting to think so. Lastly, before we move on to another video and another topic, Venezuela. The big thing that's going on in Venezuela, there's riots in the street. Guaido is calling for military action to oust Maduro. Trump is backing Guaido. The Western world is backing Guaido. Maduro is on his last straw. I want you to take a moment and just do something for yourself, for your own personal knowledge, and just do a quick Google on U.S. sanctions against Venezuela. And when you do this, you're going to read some really alarming headlines that are that have been circulating for a year, months to a year. So not something that's new, but something that's been going on. And the reason I want you to see all these headlines is because you'll notice that all of them talk about the sanctions are meant to put pressure on and crush Maduro, to crush him into surrendering Venezuela to the U.S. Sponsored leader. And when you read these articles that have been circulating for months to a year, the picture really starts to be put into place as to what's really going on in Venezuela. And what it is, yes, the people are starving. Yes, they are dire. Yes, things are bad. But whose fault is it? That's got to be the question. And the question might not lead us to the same conclusion that we're seeing on the news and what the politicians in Washington would like us to believe, which is that it is Maduro's fault. When you read these articles that clearly say, and they're from the Washington Post and the New York Times, and they're, send these to your mainstream friends who don't believe, who basically gobble up everything they see on mainstream news, send them these articles and then say, look at what's happened here. It is the United States' fault. We have specifically, and it was known in the news that we were putting sanctions on Venezuela to put immense pressure on them to get them to crumble. Well, what do you think that immense pressure is? What does that mean? That means starving people and getting people to rise up because they're starving, because they're desperate. How else are you going to incite violence and a riot? How else do you do this? Well, you make the people desperate. How do you make them desperate? Well, you don't feed them and you don't give them medical supplies. You don't give them medical treatment. That's how you make them desperate. You don't give them water. You don't give them food. You don't give them medicine. That's how you make them desperate. So that's what we did. We said we're going to put sanctions on them. We're going to put full pressure on them to where they're not able to buy the supplies they need for their people. We're going to ensure that their people go into starvation. We did this. We made the moral choice that this was the thing to do, that the right thing to do would be to starve the Venezuelan people, to deny them medical care so that we could put in the leader that we want. That's what we morally decided to do. So that's what's really going on there. Now, I'm not saying Maduro is the best leader in the world. I don't know anything about the guy, really. I don't know if he's good or if he's bad. But what I do know is that is up to the Venezuelan people. That should be their decision to make, not some foreign country coming in, meddling, sanctioning, pressuring, inciting riots, probably got CIA on the ground doing a lot of that dirty work. It's not up to us to do this. And yet, here we are doing it. Here we are doing it. So, as we read what's going on in Venezuela and as we talk to our friends and family members who gobble up, like I said, the mainstream news, send them these articles that were written by other mainstream news outlets that show them the reality of what's really going on so that we can all band together as citizens of the U.S. and say, this isn't us. This isn't who we want to be. We need to allow other people to make their own choices. We do not control the world. We shouldn't be controlling the world. This is not what we should be doing. It is not up to us to starve the Venezuelan people so that they rise up and riot and try to overturn their government. That's a pretty shitty thing to do. And yet, here we are doing it. All right, we're going to move on. The next video, we're going to be talking about Mueller and Barr and the Democrats and how they're basically ensuring that no Democrat's going to win in the 2020 election. And they're also ensuring that no anti-establishment candidate will ever be safe sitting in the White House. That is coming up next.